Welcome back to Investing Talk Podcast. We're going to be diving into Novo Nordisk today.
Absolutely.
Ticker symbol NVO.
Yeah,
And they are a big player in the diabetes and obesity treatment space.
that's right.
And let's just say their stock has been keeping everyone on their toes lately.
Yeah.
Lots of analyst upgrades,
Mm-hmm.
some impressive trial results coming out.
No doubt.
There's a lot of buzz, but is it all hype?
Yeah.
And that's what we're here to figure out today.
Yeah.
We're going to unpack that recent price surge,
Right.
decode what those technical indicators are telling us,
Absolutely.
and explore some of those key developments that could make a real difference to your portfolio.
Yeah, I think it's a fascinating case study.
Yeah.
We have a company with a solid history,
Sure.
but they're facing some potential bumps in the road too. So let's
Yeah.
see if we can separate the signal from the noise.
Absolutely. Okay, let's kick things off with that price jump.
Sure.
NVO stock shot up over 11% on January 24th, closing at $87.93.
Okay.
And this wasn't on low volume either.
Right.
We're talking over 27 million shares traded,
Huge volume.
which dwarfs their average.
Yeah, for sure.
So what's fueling this sudden surge of interest?
Well, I think there's a few things at play here.
Okay.
First, those positive results from the STEP UP trial. And, investors definitely took notice.
Yeah.
We'll dig into those a little bit more later.
Okay.
But the prospect of a highly effective new weight loss treatment,
Right.
that's a major market mover right there.
It is.
And then second, we've got those analyst upgrades.
Yeah.
It's like adding gasoline to a fire. When you
Yeah.
have multiple analysts revising their price targets upwards, it creates a sense of momentum that's hard to ignore.
It really does. Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
But then we've got those technical indicators.
Right.
And they're not exactly painting a clear picture, are they?
No, they're not.
It's kind of a mixed bag.
It really is a mixed bag, and that's where things get really interesting.
Okay.
Because, NVO is currently trading below its 50-day and 200-day moving averages.
Right.
And for our listeners who are new to these,
Yeah.
moving averages are essentially trend lines that smooth out price fluctuations.
Right.
Help us see the bigger picture
They do.
when a stock is trading below these key moving averages.
Like NVO is now?
Like NVO is right now.
Yeah.
Typically indicates a downward trend, or what we call a bearish signal.
Okay. So not exactly the picture of health
No.
you'd expect with all of this positive news
Right.
swirling around.
Right, but hold on, because the story isn't over yet.
Okay.
The 14-day RSI,
Okay.
that's the relative strength index,
Right.
is sitting at 34.8.
All right.
Now, the RSI is like a speedometer for price changes.
Okay.
It measures how quickly
Okay.
and how much the price is moving.
Gotcha.
And anything below 30 is usually considered oversold territory. Yeah, it means the stock has been dropping pretty rapidly, and it might be due for a bounce back.
Okay.
So
So even though the overall trend
Yeah.
might be down this RSI number, hints that we could see a reversal,
yeah,
a bottoming out,
potentially.
as some traders would say.
It's a possibility for sure.
Okay.
Imagine a pendulum swinging.
Yeah.
Even when it's moving in one direction,
Okay.
it eventually reaches its limit and swings back the other way.
Gotcha.
This low RS, I could be that moment for NVO where the selling pressure eases up,
Right.
buyers start stepping in, and we see a rebound.
That's something I'm sure our listeners would love to hear.
Yeah.
A potential bottoming out is always exciting,
It is.
especially when there are other positive factors in play.
For sure.
But you also mentioned the MACD,
I did.
and that's still not looking so great, right?
You're right. We can't ignore the MACD,
Okay.
which stands for Moving Average Convergence Divergence.
Right.
It's another technical indicator.
Okay.
And this one focuses on momentum.
Gotcha.
A negative MACD, like the negative 5.21 that we're seeing with NVO, suggests that the downward momentum is still strong,
Okay.
despite those hints of a potential reversal from the RSI.
So we've got these conflicting signals,
Yeah,
some suggesting a potential turnaround,
right.
others indicating that the downtrend might continue.
Exactly. It's like a tug of war between the bulls and the bears.
It is. So how should our listeners make sense of this when making investment decisions?
That's the million-dollar question.
It is.
And that's where understanding the context behind these indicators is really essential.
Okay.
So let's dig into some of the recent developments surrounding NVO
Right.
and see how they might be influencing these mixed signals.
Okay. Sounds like a plan. Let's start with the STEPUP trial you mentioned earlier. The results were pretty remarkable, right?
They were absolutely remarkable.
Yeah.
This trial focused on Novo Nordisk's semaglutide treatment,
Okay.
but at a higher dose than before,
Okay.
7.2 milligrams. And The results were impressive, to say the least.
Yeah.
After 72 weeks, patients achieved a 20.7% weight loss on average.
20.7%. That's incredible.
It's huge.
How does that stack up against other treatments on the market?
Yeah.
I know our listeners are always interested in those comparisons.
Yeah, so for context, the 2.4 milligram dose of semaglutide,
Okay.
which is already being used,
Yeah.
led to a 17.5% weight loss,
Okay.
which is still good, but the higher dose clearly packs a bigger punch.
Yeah.
And just to highlight how significant this is,
Yeah.
the placebo group only saw a 2.4% weight loss.
Wow.
Yeah.
So this higher dose is a potential game changer.
It could be.
It's no wonder investors are sitting up and taking notice.
Right.
This could be a massive win for Novo Nordisk, pushing them further ahead in the weight loss market,
Absolutely.
which is already a multi-billion-dollar industry.
Huge market and growing.
Exactly. And that brings us to those analyst upgrades
It does.
that we touched on earlier.
Yeah.
It's great to see this wave of positive sentiment.
It is.
But as investors, we also need to be level-headed
You're absolutely right.
and realistic.
For sure.
So let's break down those analyst opinions,
Good.
because I know our listeners are eager to hear what the experts are saying.
Yeah.
We have Cantor Fitzgerald reiterating an overweight rating and setting a $160 price target for NVO.
Wow.
Then there's BNP Paribas giving it a strong buy rating.
Okay.
Even Sanford C. Bernstein,
Mm-hmm.
who were previously less optimistic,
Right.
upgraded the stock to market perform.
Interesting.
That's a pretty significant shift in sentiment.
It is. It really is. And it's reflected in the consensus price target,
Okay.
which currently sits at $145.25.
Wow.
That represents a potential upside of 65.72%,
Okay.
which is a significant potential gain.
It is.
It's understandable why investors are excited.
Yeah, okay. So we have stellar trial results.
Yeah.
Analysts practically throwing buy ratings at NVO.
Right.
It all sounds pretty rosy,
It does.
but there's always a catch.
Right? Always a catch.
There has to be a counterpoint to all of this optimism.
You're right. So let's take a look at Novo Nordisk's financials.
Okay.
Because those are the backbone of any sound investment decision.
They are.
And to be fair, they have a strong track record.
Okay.
In Q1 of 2024, their revenue increased by a whopping 22.45% year over year,
Wow.
reaching $65,349 million.
That's a lot of money.
It's a lot of money.
All right.
Their net profit also jumped 28.23% to $25,407 million,
Okay.
resulting in a very healthy net profit margin of 38.88%.
Those numbers look fantastic.
They do look great.
So where's the potential downside?
Yeah.
What should investors be cautious about?
Well, remember those blockbuster drugs we mentioned?
Yeah, Ozempic,
Ozempic, Rybelsus,
Rybelsus,
and Wegovy.
there we go.
These are the very drugs that are driving much of Novo Nordisk's success.
Right.
But here's the catch.
Oh,
They've been selected for U.S. price negotiations.
okay. That's a significant development.
It is.
And not necessarily a positive one for Novo Nordisk.
Right.
Can you explain what that means for our listeners
Sure.
and how it could impact their investment decisions?
So these negotiations could significantly impact the pricing of these drugs from 2027 onward.
Okay.
Now, we don't know the exact outcome yet,
Right.
but it's a potential headwind that investors need to factor into their analysis.
Okay.
Reduced pricing power could eat into Novo Nordisk's profit margins,
Right.
which would obviously impact their stock price.
Yeah, so it's not all smooth sailing for Novo Nordisk.
No, it's not.
They have incredible potential.
They do.
But there are also some storm clouds on the horizon.
There are.
I think our listeners are getting a good sense of the complexities involved here.
Yeah.
But before we move on, I want to touch on another important aspect.
Okay.
Competition.
Yeah, that's a crucial point.
It is.
Novo Nordisk isn't the only player in this game.
Right.
The diabetes and obesity treatment markets are getting increasingly crowded.
They are.
Mm-hmm.
That's a great segue into the next part of our analysis.
All right.
In part 2 of our Novo Nordisk analysis, we'll explore the competitive landscape,
Okay.
the challenges of upcoming patent expirations,
Right.
and what all of this means for the company's long-term growth potential.
Sounds good.
So make sure you tune in for part 2
All
of
right.
Investing Talk Podcast.
See you there. Welcome back to Investing Talk Podcast.
We're continuing our analysis of Novo Nordisk.
As promised, let's talk about competition.
Yeah, because Novo Nordisk isn't playing in an empty sandbox, right?
Not at all. The diabetes and obesity treatment markets are getting crowded with big players like Eli Lilly and Company and Boehringer Ingelheim all vying for market share.
Eli Lilly in particular has been making waves with their own weight loss drug, Mounjaro.
Yes, Mounjaro is a direct competitor to Novo Nordisk's Wegovy. It's a similar type of drug, a GLP-1 receptor agonist, and it's also showing impressive results in clinical trials. To give our listeners a better understanding, these GLP-1 receptor agonists work by mimicking a hormone that helps regulate blood sugar and appetite. They're proving to be very effective for both diabetes and weight loss.
So how does Novo Nordisk plan to stay ahead of the curve with all these rivals breathing down their neck?
Well, they're definitely not resting on their laurels. They've got a robust pipeline of new treatments in development, including even more potent versions of their existing drugs. They're also exploring new drug delivery methods like oral formulations of GLP-1 agonists, which could be a game changer in terms of patient convenience. Imagine taking a pill instead of an injection. That could be a big draw for patients.
Okay, so innovation is key. But they're also facing another challenge, patent expirations. What's the impact of that going to be? This is something our listeners always need to be aware of when investing in pharmaceutical companies.
It's a valid concern. Patents are the lifeblood of pharmaceutical companies. They provide a period of exclusivity, typically 20 years from the date of filing, where they can recoup their massive research and development costs and generate profits. When patents expire, generic versions of the drug can flood the market, often at a fraction of the price. This can significantly impact the original drug maker's revenue and profitability.
So which of Novo Nordisk's key patents are we talking about here? And how soon will they be facing this generic competition?
Well, some of their older insulin products are already facing generic competition. And looking ahead, some of their blockbuster GLP-1 agonists like Ozempic and Rybelsus will start seeing patent expirations in the coming years. This means they'll need to have new, innovative products ready to launch to offset the potential revenue loss from these patent cliffs.
So how is Novo Nordisk preparing for this potential hit to their bottom line? Are they just sitting back and waiting for the inevitable, or do they have a plan?
They're definitely not sitting idly by. They're taking a multi-pronged approach. First, as we mentioned, they're investing heavily in research and development to bring new patented drugs to market. Second, they're working to secure new patents for improved formulations or different uses of their existing drugs, effectively extending their exclusivity. Think of it like adding new layers of protection around their intellectual property. And third, they're looking to expand into new markets both geographically and therapeutically.
New markets. Can you elaborate on that? What are some of the specific strategies they're employing?
Geographically, they're expanding their reach into emerging markets where there's a growing middle class and a rising demand for diabetes and obesity treatments. Think of countries like China and India. These are massive markets with huge potential for growth. And therapeutically, they're exploring applications for their drugs beyond their current indications. For example, there's ongoing research into using GLP-1 agonists for conditions like Alzheimer's disease and fatty liver disease. If these prove successful, it could significantly expand their market potential and open up whole new revenue streams.
That's a smart strategy, diversify and conquer. It sounds like they're taking the patent cliff seriously and actively working to mitigate the risks. But let's bring it back to the investor's perspective. With all these factors at play, the promising trial results, the strong financials, the competition, the patent expirations, the new market opportunities, what's the overall outlook for Novo Nordisk? Is this a stock worth considering for our listeners' portfolios?
It's definitely a company worth keeping on your radar. The diabetes and obesity markets are only going to grow in the coming years, and Novo Nordisk is well positioned to capitalize on that growth. They have a proven track record of innovation, a strong financial foundation, and a clear strategy for addressing the challenges ahead. But there are also risks to consider, particularly those looming U.S. price negotiations and the ever-present threat of competition.
So should our listeners be rushing to buy NVO stock, or should they approach with caution?
That's what we'll discuss in the final part of our Novo Nordisk analysis. We'll weigh the pros and cons, look at those technical indicators in light of the company's fundamentals and future prospects, and try to give you a clear picture of what to expect. So stay tuned for part 3, where we'll give you our final take on whether NVO is a buy, hold, or sell.
All right, we're back for the final part of our Novo Nordisk analysis on Investing Talk podcast.
It's been a deep dive, hasn't it?
It has.
We've covered their recent price surge, decoded those mixed signals from the technical indicators,
Right.
explored the exciting STEPUP trial results,
Yeah.
and analyze those analysts' upgrades.
Mhm.
We also dug into their strong financials, but acknowledged the uncertainty surrounding those pricing negotiations.
Right.
And of course, we can't forget about the competition
Right.
and those patent expirations looming on the horizon.
Right.
So where does all of this leave us?
Yeah.
Is NVO a buy, a hold, or a sell? That's the question on every investor's mind.
It's exactly.
Yeah.
Our listeners are eager to hear your expert opinion. Should they jump on the NVO bandwagon or steer clear?
Well, if only investing were that simple.
Oh.
There's no one-size-fits-all answer.
Right.
It all boils down to your individual risk tolerance, investment goals, and time horizon.
Of course.
But I can offer my perspective based on everything we've discussed.
Okay, we're all ears. Our listeners value your insights.
Let's start by recapping the positives.
Okay.
Novo Nordisk is a frontrunner in a market that's poised for significant growth.
Right.
The demand for diabetes and obesity treatments is only going to increase in the coming years, and they're well-positioned to capitalize on that trend.
Yeah.
They have a solid track record of innovation,
Mm-hmm.
with those blockbuster drugs already generating substantial revenue,
Right.
and a pipeline of promising new treatments that could further solidify their market leadership.
For sure.
And let's not forget their strong financials.
Yeah. Those were impressive.
Healthy revenue growth and those impressive profit margins.
It sounds like they have a lot going for them, but I know you mentioned some potential downsides as well.
I did, yeah.
How do those factor into your assessment?
You're right. It's not all sunshine and rainbows.
Right.
Those upcoming U.S. price negotiations are a major wild card.
Okay.
They could significantly impact Novo Nordisk's profitability moving forward.
Mm-hmm.
The possibility of reduced pricing power is a real concern for investors.
Yeah.
Then there's the competitive landscape. It's a crowded field. And Novo Nordisk can't afford to rest on its laurels.
Right.
They need to keep innovating and developing new treatments to stay ahead of the curve.
For sure.
And of course, we can't downplay the impact of those patent expirations.
Yeah.
They're a real threat, even with the strategies they've put in place to mitigate the risk.
So it's a balancing act.
Yeah.
Weighing the potential rewards against the inherent risks. That's what
Yeah.
makes investing so challenging. It's never black and white. There are always shades of gray.
Absolutely. And that's why it's crucial for investors to do their own due diligence.
Yeah.
Don't just rely on my opinion, or anyone else's for that matter.
Right.
Dig into Novo Nordisk's financial statements, read those analyst reports, follow the industry news, and form your own informed opinion. Investing is a personal journey, and there's no substitute for thorough research.
That's such an important point. We can provide information and analysis,
Yeah.
but ultimately, the decision of whether or not to invest is a personal one.
It is.
But to help our listeners make that decision,
Yeah.
can you share your final verdict on NVO? Is it a buy, a hold, or a sell in your book?
For me, right now, NVO is a hold.
Okay.
I'm cautiously optimistic about their long-term prospects, but I want to see how those pricing negotiations play out
Yeah.
and how effectively they navigate the competitive landscape and those looming patent expirations.
Makes sense.
If they can successfully address these challenges, I believe this stock has the potential for significant growth.
Okay.
But there's also a downside risk if things don't go their way.
So it's a wait-and-see approach.
Yeah.
Monitor the situation closely, keep an eye on those key factors, and then make an informed decision based on how things unfold. That sounds like a prudent strategy.
It is.
And it underscores the importance of staying informed.
Yeah.
The world of investing is constantly changing, and investors need to stay up to date to make the best decisions for their portfolios.
Couldn't agree more. Knowledge is power, especially in investing.
It is.
The more you know, the better equipped you are to navigate the ups and downs of the market.
And speaking of knowledge, we've covered a lot of ground today, but there's always more to learn. Here's something for our listeners to ponder. What if Novo Nordisk's success in treating obesity leads to a significant reduction in the prevalence of type 2 diabetes? Could they disrupt their own core market? It's a fascinating question and one that highlights the complex and ever-evolving nature of the healthcare industry.
That's a thought-provoking question, and it underscores the importance of adaptability in the business world. Even the most successful companies need to be prepared for change and willing to adjust their strategies to stay ahead of the curve.
On that note, we want to thank you for joining us for this comprehensive analysis of Novo Nordisk.
Of course.
We hope you found it informative and insightful. Remember, investing is a journey, not a destination.
That's right.
It's about learning, adapting, and making informed decisions that align with your individual goals.
And remember, there are resources available to help you along the way. Don't be afraid to seek advice from financial professionals or utilize the wealth of information available online. The more you know, the more confident you'll be in your investment decisions.
And if you enjoyed this episode of Investing Talk Podcast, please do us a favor and subscribe to our channel. Share it with your friends, family, and fellow investors. And don't forget to leave us a comment. We'd love to hear your thoughts on Novo Nordisk or any other companies you'd like us to cover in future episodes. Until next time, happy investing.